here we are again. George Harrison album ranking, done John Lennon, I've done Paul McCartney. This is going to be interesting, it's going to be fun. What was interesting about revisiting albums for this video, because I was specifically revisiting the albums I maybe haven't heard as many times, and I always kind of go back and forth on whether Paul McCartney or George Harrison had the better solo career. I concluded today that it's George Harrison, because I think that George Harrison's weaker albums, his bad albums, I think I like them more than Paul McCartney's bad albums. So, maybe it's an unfair thing to say because Paul obviously had, almost double the amount of albums. So, of course, there's going to be more duds. But you know what? At least George Harrison never released For You. So let's get started. Of course, this is in the wrong order. That's fine. I struggled a bit to find a tier list thing that included electronic music and wonderful music, but I found them. Also, Travelling Wilburys are here for some reason, so maybe I'll rank them. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when we get there. Okay, so we'll start with George Harrison's debut album, Electronic Sound, which is just him messing around with a Moog synthesizer. It was released on Apple side label called Zappa Records or something like that, which is meant to be just for weird experimental stuff. It's kind of unlistenable, but it exists. Cool that George Harrison, I think, was the first person to buy a Moog synthesizer, I'm pretty sure. But I can't really recommend this album. But you know what? It's better than John Lennon's experimental albums. So, okay. Next we have Wonderwall Music, which is a soundtrack. It's a soundtrack for a movie. And there's some cool stuff on here, but I don't really listen to it. I don't really like listening to it, but there's some cool stuff on here. Also, yes, Oasis definitely got the Wonderwall, that title, from this. So there you go. Now we have George Harrison's proper solo debut after the Beatles broke up. All Things Must Pass, which is a Goliath. It's technically a triple album, although I wouldn't really count the Apple Jam as a part of the album, really. Really successful. Obviously it had the single, My Sweet Lord, and it is a contender for the best Beatles solo album. I think it's, I think George Harrison he was kind of held back when he was with the Beatles. He was starting to write a lot of songs towards the end, and he didn't really have anything he could do with them. And I think doing this album, it all just came out in one massive creative burst. And as a result, you just have a big album of incredible songs. And I know I kind of said that Plastic Ono Band might be my favourite Beatles solo album, but I'm sure in 1970 the public felt that George Harrison was, dominating, and he was commercially, for sure. Obviously, this is an S tier album. My Sweet Lord, great song. What Is Life, Run of the Mill, Behind That Locked Door, I Live For You, Beware of Darkness. Just track after track, incredible. If Not For You, of the opener, I'd Have You Anytime. That's one of my favourite George songs for sure. Wah Wah, which is about how annoying Paul McCartney is, which is kind of funny. I think the only kind of criticism I have of this album is Phil Spector. I think certain songs on here may be a bit overproduced. I wish I could hear a slightly demixed version of this album. I do recommend listening to the album George Harrison Early Takes, I think it's called, which is a collection of kind of demos and early takes from kind of All Things Must Pass period. Some of the tracks are just songs that didn't make it onto albums, and it's a good listen. It's nice hearing George Harrison in a kind of stripped back fashion. It's almost like his acoustic album. It's got an early version of Waiting on You All, which is quite good. Run of the Mill, just a stripped back acoustic version of that. So yeah, if this were on here, it'd probably go pretty high. It's a really good listen, maybe like B or A. Okay, let's move on to Living in the Material World, which was also really successful. Between All Things Must Pass and Living in the Material World, he continued his kind of success. He did the Concert for Bangladesh, which was really successful. It's kind of the first like big charity, gig festival thing. It definitely inspired like Live Aid and that kind of thing. Brilliant thing, brilliant album. Which it also, if it was on here, that would be pretty high, to be honest. The Concert for Bangladesh album is really good. The single Bangladesh was pretty good. Obviously, it was all for a great cause for the conflict going on in Bangladesh. So he really was on top of the world. And that did continue with Living in the Material World, which is going to go in A tier. It had a big single, Give Me Love, which I do think is one of his best songs. It's a slightly different vibe to All Things Must Pass. It's a bit more, doesn't have the Phil Spector production. It's not too overproduced, it's a bit more sparse. I would say it's a very meditative album, quite spiritual. But it's got some, high energy songs. The title track is great. Don't Let Me Wait Too Long, that's a nice song, quite Beatley. Sue Me, Sue You Blues, which is about the court cases going on with the Beatles. Be Here Now is a beautiful track. Yeah, I don't really have anything to complain about it. I just feel like it's not in the same tier as All Things Must Pass, although I'm slightly tempted. I'm gonna keep it an A for now. But after Living the Material World, things started to go a little bit wrong for George. Both in personally and music-wise. Obviously, him and Patty Boyd, I think, divorced around this time. He did his infamous Dark Horse tour, in which he lost his voice, which didn't help, but that wasn't even like the most controversial thing about it. Audiences felt he was very preachy. He changed a lot of the lyrics, especially like of Beatles songs, to be about God. As infamous as that tour is, I do think that tour was filmed, but it's yet to be officially released. I think it should be. I think that'd be cool to see. But also, whilst this tour was going on, he made an album. He made an album during all that chaos, and so it was just kind of a mess of an album production, kind of like a wildlife situation where I feel like if this were developed more, it would be better. And of course, his voice isn't in top shape. But I think it's a slightly overhated album. I'm going to put it in C tier. There are some good songs on here. The title track's quite good, although I kind of like the demo version more. Far East Man is a good track. So Sad, Simply Shady, My Love. Decent tracks. I kind of like the intro, instrumental. Harry's on tour. I don't like Bye Bye Love, and I don't like Ding Dong Ding Dong. That's a pretty annoying song. Dark Horse, not bad. Unfortunately, Extra Texture is bad. This is a bad album. It's just really, really weak. Really weak. I don't get much from this album. I think the opening track, You, is good. It was written for Ronnie Spector, I believe. So it's kind of a high range for him. And yeah, it's great. There's also This Guitar Can't Keep From Crying, which is a decent song that's meant to be a sequel to While My Guitar Gently Weeps. There's also a song called Can't Stop Thinking About You, which is alright. That's an okay song, I guess. Okay. Then we have 33rd in a Third, which is a bit of a slight return to form. It had a couple of good singles. This song, which is about the My Sweet Lord court case, that's a good song. I think it showcases George Harrison's sense of humour a little bit, and I also really like the music video. And also Crackerbox Palace, which was a single. I like that song. A few other highlights would be Woman Don't You Cry For Me, It's What You Value, Beautiful Girl. It's a very, very enjoyable album. I'm going to go B tier, I think. And then we have George Harrison. Self-Titled album. I think this album is brilliant. I love this album. Had a minor hit single with Blow Away, which is a good song. Also, Love Comes to Everyone, which is a personal favourite George Harrison song for me. Your Love Is Forever. It's a beautiful track. I think that would be right at home on Living in the Material World. Dark Sweet Lady. That's a good song. Faster. Here Comes the Moon, which is a sequel to Here Comes the Sun. I think that's a good song. Also Not Guilty, which originates from the White Album period. And the Beatles really tried with that song. They did over 100 takes, but it still didn't make the cut. And to be fair, I listened to those Beatles attempts, and they're not that good. This is the version on this album is quite good. Okay. I think it's A tier, and you know what? I think I like it more than Living in the Material World. I really dig this album. I dig it. Okay, but then we have Somewhere in England. Pretty big drop in quality from Self-Titled. Unfortunately, there was a lot of drama around this album with the record company. I think they rejected the album. They said that it's not commercial enough, so he had to quickly write and record new songs that are more commercial. And this album, is it bad? Maybe, but I kind of like it. I think it's almost like my guilty pleasure George Harrison album. It had the big single All Those Years Ago. Was originally written to be kind of a tribute to the Beatles. A bit of, it's kind of like When We Was Fab. Meant to be like a nostalgic song, but then of course John Lennon passed away, so it was rewritten to be specifically about John Lennon. Maybe not as moving as Here Today, which I realised in my Paul McCartney video I completely glossed over that song when I talked about Tug of War. That is a brilliant song, really sad, but it's good. All Those Years Ago is also kind of a Beatles reunion song because Paul McCartney and Ringo play on it, and I think it's a decent song. And I also like Teardrops and Life Itself. I like this album, but I know it's not. I know it ranks pretty low. I'm going to put it in C, below Dark Horse. Okay, next we have Gone Troppo, which I think George Harrison only made out of contractual obligation. I think he sort of left the music industry around this time, pretty much. Sort of semi-retired. Became a professional gardener instead. And this is another George Harrison that's kind of bad, but I kind of like it anyway. Guilty pleasure. It's just got a fun vibe. I like the title track. There's a song called Dream Away, I think, which I quite like. I Really Love You. It's a kind of a funny song because it just doesn't sound like George Harrison at all. Wake Up My Love is a song. That's the Way It Goes is pretty decent as well. So I'm going to go C. I'm going to put it above Somewhere in England. Still below Dark Horse. I'm sort of tempted to put it above Dark Horse. I'm not going to lie, but it's fine. They're all in C. And then we have Cloud 9. What's kind of funny with this album is Paul McCartney was, doing really well. He had constant hits. Even on his kind of bad albums, not particularly well received albums, he was always having hits, and then he started to kind of struggle a little bit towards the latter half of the 80s. But who comes out of the woodworks and releases just a mega hit? George Harrison. Obviously, really commercial album. I mean, look at the album cover. It's maybe not his best album cover. Had a big single with "Got My Mind Set on You," which I don't mind that song. But it's not the best song on the album. But there are a lot of great songs in this album, in my opinion. You've got the title track, "This Is Love," Fish on the Sand, Devil's Radio, When We Was Fab. I think this is a really good album, despite its slightly glossy 80s vibe. It's produced by Jeff Lynne, I think. Let's go B tier. And I'm going to put it slightly above 33rd and a third, I think. So now we have a pretty massive gap between Cloud9 and the next album, Brainwashed. Jorje Harrison had a really chaotic and busy late 80s and 90s. After Cloud9, you obviously had the Travelling Wilburys. He did a tour of Japan with a live album. There was the Beatles Anthology project and Reunion. He was dealing with a lot of court cases and stuff. I think something was going on with his movie company. There was some drama going on with Paul McCartney, and obviously then they kind of had to make up to do the anthology thing. There was also, obviously he got lung cancer, which went away and then came back, and during all that he was doing other court cases. I think there was a court case over the Star Club tapes, which George showed up in court for. There was all sorts of stuff going on, and throughout all that he was working on an album gradually. So it was almost like the winds of winter of albums. Just kept, you can find interviews of from the mid 90s of him saying, "Oh yeah, I'm doing an album." So the recordings on this album were very all over the place. They range from 1987 to 2002. Obviously Jorje Harrison unfortunately passed away before he could finish the album, but he kind of gave his blessing to Jeff Lynne and Nanny Harrison to finish it for him with some guidelines. So slightly different situation to Milk and Honey as a posthumous album, where there was more of an effort to make it feel like a finished product. I think maybe if Jorje Harrison had lived to see the project through, it might be a bit better. But also because it took so long to make it, as a result, it's a pretty high quality batch of songs. It's not a rushed album. And as the last Jorje Harrison album, it's quite good, and it's interesting to hear his last album as well, and kind of wondering where he would have gone afterwards. Good songs would include Any Road. That is a good song. You can actually watch a sort of live version in his final TV interview thing, which was meant to be an interview with Ravi Shankar promoting an album of his, I believe. But then they gave him a guitar and he played All Things Must Pass and Any Road, which is a good song, a nice song. My favourite song on the album though is probably Stuck Inside a Cloud. That's a really, really good song. It's a very George Harrison sounding song with classic slide stuff going on. Also, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea is a good song. That's like a traditional song from the 1930s or something, but that's a nice version. And I think the title track's pretty interesting. Yeah, I recommend listening to that song. It's just interesting. Marble Blues, that's quite good. I think it's a great album. I'm going to put it in B tier, below these two songs. But I do recommend this album. So there you go. Those are all the Jorje Harrison albums. The only obviously that his live album isn't on here. The Live in Japan album, I wouldn't really necessarily include live albums anyway, but I think that was the only one he had. Well, Concert from Bangladesh, and I think that one's the only ones. If it were on here, it'd be C tier. That is kind of it's an okay. The problem with it is it's too much of a greatest hits set list. Too many Beatles songs, I think. Way too many Beatles songs. And obviously they're all not the best versions, but the tracks which are his own songs are not bad. I like the version of Devil's Radio on that album. Also, Eric Clapton is on the album, so it's there. I think it's worth checking out, but it's not a super strong live album. It's no Wings Over America. I'll quickly rank Travelling Wilburys. Travelling Wilburys 1 is really good, for an B tier. Travelling Wilburys 2 is not as good, but it's decent. So there you go. That was my ranking of the George Harrison albums. Let me know your thoughts on my tier list and what yours would be, where you would place certain albums. I am not doing a Ringo album tier list. I can't remember if I've mentioned that. I've heard maybe like 4 of his albums. Maybe I'll do it someday. Instead, I'm going to do a Pete Best solo album ranking. So watch out for that one. Also, in relevance to that, make sure you vote in the poll that I posted yesterday on who your favourite Beatle is. I'm sure you'll pick the right one. I'm sure you will. Also, I have already done a Beatles album tier list, so you can find that somewhere. Maybe I'll link it in the description. More content coming soon. I'm going to attempt to do daily uploading for a while. It probably won't last very long because it never does. So place your bets on what the streak's going to be. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe and all that jazz. Take care. Love you. See you soon. Goodbye.